Hashem's V'sai Tivtach L'pi Hagitza Sacha. We're now in the 24th and second to last Perek of Melachim Beis. We are having a new midah. That is the midah of arrogance. We're going to see throughout this Perek that one of the important midos that got in the way of the kings and the trickle down to the people is this idea of arrogance. And so if we have, it's so interesting that Nebuchadnezzar, who is the Melech Bavel, the king of Bavel, and perhaps the villain in the story, he is known as a megalomaniac. He built things that put his own name on the bricks. He made sure that he was great and wildly established as a king to be reckoned with. And he, in this Perek, is really the Eved Hashem. He's the one who's being sent by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why? Because the people are not doing well. They are rebelling. In fact, the king, who is Yehoiakim, he is the vassal to Nebuchadnezzar for 3 years, and then he can't do it anymore. He has to rebel against him. And so again, that would have been perhaps a very strategically smart move. Yehoiakim, just stay, put your head down, just allow for the Jews and everyone to stay under the radar. No. He has to rebel against Nebuchadnezzar. And in fact, if you think about it, Yehoiakim also rebelled against HaKadosh Baruch Hu in so many different ways. When Yirmiyahu sent a letter trying very hard to convince him to be different, he ripped it up and burned it. When what were some of the things that he did? Lahachis against Hashem. Well, he said, Hashem, basically, you're no longer important to me. Because, we take light, for example, and the light comes from the sun, not from you. And not only that, I don't need you, and I don't even need your sun that you made. Why? Because I have gold, and gold shines, and gold will be shining enough. He also tattooed his privates with his name, or the name of Hashem, to show, really up yours. And furthermore, he purposely did incest, really just to show Hashem, I don't need you. I am great on my own accord. I'm amazing. I am Yakim. I am great. And as a result, he really did horrible things. And so Hashem was angry with him and angry with the people who were following in accordance with Yehoiakim's reign. And you have to understand, and this is really interesting actually, if you think about it, the Jewish people during this time were on a very different level than we are. They truly understood Yad Hashem. They were experts in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so when they negated and rebelled against Hashem, they knew exactly what they were doing. We, so many generations later, we're like Tinuk Shenishbo. We're like Tom. We don't fully understand. You can fully, if someone is a coder who understands code and they purposely break a computer with their coding, that they're held responsible. But if I were to take a computer and play because I don't know the first thing about computers or coding, you wouldn't hold me accountable to my actions, because what do I know? Here are the people, they really knew what they were doing. And yet, with all of everything that they're given, they rebelled against Hashem, and they follow in accordance with the Nevi'im. And they're getting also bad information from them. Now, Hashem, therefore, is really angry. And he lets loose on all of Yehuda to destroy it, all the enemies that he was holding back from doing it. Why? Because we have continued to sin, starting with Menashe. Menashe was also started Lahachas, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And so the king is following in the wrong footsteps, and as a result, Hashem is so angry. And also because of the blood that he shed, he killed Nevi'im, and in fact, he he killed a lot of people innocently, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu hates murder. Murder is another way of showing arrogance, because Hashem is the one to bring life and death. And if you decide, you know what, I can do what Hashem can do, I can take away life just like Hashem takes away life, again, that's very, very arrogant. And Hashem doesn't forgive murder. Those are the things that's crossing a line that Hashem cannot actually forgive. And so for that reason, and for many others that we will get into, God willing, when we understand Divrei Hayamim, Yehoyakim dies, and everything is written in the Sefer Amalchei Yehuda. And after him, Yehoyachin, his son, becomes the king. Now, Yehoyachin is another one who decides that, you know what, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to make a treaty, and I am going to try. Well, first he does what's displeasing in the eyes of Hashem. Vayas hara b'nei Hashem kachol asher asa aviv. And now we perhaps have to fill in some of the details. So in addition to Vayas hara b'nei Hashem, and he follows in the way he does bad in the eyes of Hashem, kachol asher asa aviv, just like his father. So let's understand. So first of all, he didn't in any way stop the Avodah Zarah. He was as spiritually corrupt as his father. Now, that's the first thing. The second is that he could have reversed his father's sins. He could have done something, but he continues to do it lahachas. And he continues to do it, and he ignores all of the warnings of Yirmiyahu. Because remember, Hashem declared that Bavel was going to be the superpower. All they have to do, these kings, is surrender, and they would live. And perhaps if they lived, yes, it wouldn't be under the best, most optimal circumstances, but they would be able to go on. They would be able to stay in Eretz Yisrael. They would be able to perhaps start to think of how to change themselves spiritually. But they couldn't. They had this block. They're kavod. He refuses to humble himself before Nebuchadnezzar, and that level of refusing to cooperate was just again more and more difficulty, because so he only rules for 3 months, and during that time he doesn't do anything of significance. It's important that this arrogance in these last remaining kings are fully understood, because it's so difficult that they couldn't see the forest for the trees. They couldn't understand. You have a chance. You have a chance to survive. You have a chance to do better. You know that Hashem will be with you on some level, and yet he is young, he's inexperienced, and his corrupt advisors don't advise him correctly, and he doesn't, and that's it. So when Nebuchadnezzar finally arrives, Yehoiachin surrenders, but at that point the damage is done. It's too late. And so his arrogance and his lack of humility really impact on, again, the Churban. And that is, right, so if we go back and we understand that Yehoiachin, with all of his people, his Avadav, the Sarav, the Sarasav, so they all have to surrender to the king of Bavel, and Bavel takes them all captive in the 8th year of his kingship, and he carries off from Yerushalayim all of the treasures of the Beis Hamikdash. He strips everything. Vayikitz katzitz as kol kilei hazahav. He takes all the gold that Shlomo HaMelech did, that he made, all of the beauty. It's all going. Everything that was so beautiful is all going. Now we know that there's going to be more that's going, and that's going to be the Cheresh Masker. That's going to be the artisans and the people, the Besra mention, the elite. He said everyone that perhaps the Talmidei Chachamim, and so he's not just taking the concrete gold, but he's taking the Jewish gold. 10,000 people he puts into exile, and the only people that are allowed to stay are the Dalas Am Haaretz, the poorest spiritually, the poorest financially, the lowest echelon in society. They're allowed to stay. And Yehoiachin goes to Bavel, and everybody is brought down from Yerushalayim to Bavel. As Kol Anshe HaChayil, the able men, 7,000 of them. Now included in this going down is Mordechai, it's Daniel, it is Yechezkel. It is really all of the people that were leaders, and they're amazing, and they all go down to Bavel. Now, on the one hand, one could say, you know what? This is so harsh and so horrendous, and this is just the worst possible thing, and we get left a few little, stragglers of the lowlifes and that get to stay in Yerushalayim. Like, this is terrible. But if you think about it in a different way, and we understand just a little bit of sociology even, we know that the only way for a nation to survive is if they have roots somewhere, if they have an infrastructure, if they have people who, when they speak, everyone else goes chayrish, everyone else, can't talk, and you can only hear what they have to say. That's the Chayrish Masker. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in fact, was ensuring that the Jewish people remain forever. And while we are our own worst enemies, Hashem loves us so much that he says, you know what? Here's how it's going to go down. Just like it happened in Mitzrayim, where all of the people that had gone down earlier and had set up Goshen, so that what would happen is that the Jewish people would survive under the horrors of Mitzrayim. So here too, they're going into Babel, and we're going to remain in exile for a really long time. But the fact that we have a head start on the infrastructure is that when the Jews come down, the last remaining Jews, the people who don't know any better, they're going to have yeshivas and shuls and schools and mikvahs and eateries, and that's what's being set up. And in fact, that is very much what happened in American Jewry when there were people here that were setting up the infrastructure so that when the Holocaust happened and people came to this country, there was what to embrace them with. There was already something that was we called the refuah before the makkah, that we had the medicine before the actual illness. And so here is, again, even in the most darkest of Jewish history, and a time that is so horrible that we're leaving, and the king, everyone in an embarrassment and a disarray, what we have is we have something beautiful. We have the idea that Hashem allows for there to be the infrastructure to ensure the survival of the Jewish people. And then afterwards, we have Matanya. Matanya, who's going to be called Tzidkiyahu. And what is it that he is Yehoiachin's uncle? And what is so special about changing his name from Matanya to Tzidkiyahu is, again, every time that the Jewish people, the king, had their name changed, what it highlights is that we're just not in control. And there is machlokas as to, it seems like on the one hand, Matanya or Tzidkiyahu is righteous, like his name, Tzidkiyahu. On the other hand, he doesn't necessarily fulfill his commandments to the nth degree, and he is the final straw that breaks the camel's back and forces us into Bavel completely. We'll get into it later on, but essentially, Tzidkiyahu had promised Bavel, using the name of Mefarash, Nebuchadnezzar, using the name of Mefarash of Hashem, and enlisted the help of the Sanhedrin, and then he broke his promise. The promise, the Midrash says, has to do with the fact that Tzidkiyahu witnessed Nebuchadnezzar eating from a raw rabbit. and promised that by his name that he would never ever mention it, the name of Hashem, and ultimately he told on him, and he told the Sanhedrin, and as a result, this is just one element that went into the rationale of not being able to. Of the reason being that the Jewish people went into the Gullus. Another was the idea as, well, let's see, what was he supposed to do? Oh yeah, that's right, just like the rest of the kings, just be subservient to Nebuchadnezzar. He is a Eved, and he is the servant of Hashem in this point because you deserve to be punished. So he goes, he does Rabbeinu Hashem, meaning he wasn't able to be successful in to wipe out that idolatry or that lahachas mentality of the people. And not only that, he rebels against Bavel. And rebelling against Bavel in this regard is rebelling against Hashem. He couldn't bring himself to lower himself to the king of Bavel. Once again, his arrogance of thinking only of himself and have his kavod, and being so sensitive to what it means to listen and to be flexible to someone who is asking you to do something for the sake of the nation was too much for him, and he couldn't do it. And as a result, Tzidkiyahu rebels against the king of Babel, thinking, okay, I'm doing what's right. You're not doing what's right. Yirmiyahu told him multiple times, all you have to do is stay under the radar, be subservient to the king, and we will get through this, and you can focus on the inner structure of the people and helping them to be their very best self. But instead, Tzidkiyahu rebels against the king of Babel. He can't bring himself to do what Yirmiyahu HaNavi tells him to do. And as a result, Nebuchadnezzar gets angrier and angrier and angrier. All he needed to do is submit in life. Look how the kavod just got in the way. And honestly, that is something that is really significant. We see it in spades in this Perek. The idea of just follow in accordance with what Hashem says. Submit. Do what it is that's being asked of you. Not because it's easy, but because it's being asked of you by Hashem. And he didn't. And he listened instead to the false prophets, the ones that said, oh no, you will definitely rise up against Babel. You will definitely be a superpower. Miracles will happen on your behalf. You deserve it. You're amazing. And when we listen to that inner voice, yes, we have to have a strong sense of self. But no one is calling, no one has to, there is a difference between having a strong sense of self and having an inflated ego. And what we have here are people who their mahus was that they couldn't be subservient to anything but their own whims and desires. And we can't judge them because, again, they were on an idea and a trajectory that is a very high level. But on the other hand, we can learn from them. And as we're slowly, getting to the end, the final king of Yehuda, before we go into Galus, we have to take note of these lessons, because these are not lessons that are a storybook for the sake of just a bedtime story. These are messages that we need to internalize, especially as we are a part of and during the time of the 3 weeks where it's just blatantly obvious what we've really lost.